Welcome to this special meeting of the Gainesville City Commission. You might be tempted to think that this is actually a general policy session, so it's at our regular general policy time, but it is in fact a City Commission special meeting because we have a couple of things that we'll need to vote on. All right, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we have adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion second to adopt the agenda as printed and distributed. Any comments up here? So all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously with Commissioner Duncan Walker absent.
Mr. Mayor, we are moving on to our first business discussion item, which is 2025-371 fiscal year 2026 budget development workshop with a recommendation that the City Commission hear the presentation from staff.
Madam Manager.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. So today we will continue our budget workshop. We have some of our operational departments that will present some highlights, but before they do that, Cynthia Ramos will go through the detail of the budget reviews that we've had to date. At our last meeting, we talked more about the charter officers and some of our internal support agencies, like HR and finance, but today we'll get deeper into operations with fire and public works and GPD, and park recreations, park recreation and cultural affairs. And so with that, Ms. Ramos is before you. She's leading our budget efforts. Ms. Susan Boyd is with us today. We wish her well. She had some illness, and so, we want to make sure that she knows that we're thinking about her because she's worked very hard to help us out. And so with that, Ms. Ramos.
Right. Welcome, Ms. Ramos.
Hello, Cynthia Ramos, Executive Chief of Staff. I will walk us through the budget timeline. We are in May 22nd. We'll review the budgets for police, fire, parks, recreation and cultural affairs, and public works. And we also will have the first public hearing for the fire assessment today. When we last met on May 8th, we presented several departments over to you all. So just reminding you of where we left off. And we have some department presentations for you today. We have the, this template is here included so that anyone that's following along, that's watching us, there are 6 sections to the slides. The first section will be the department name. The second section will be the core services, and this lists the core services of the department or things that they are focused on delivering to the public. We have our strategic connections to the strategic plan. We'll go over budget trends. That includes actuals for last fiscal year, the adopted budget, any changes in the current fiscal year and what the proposed budget is, and variance to the adopted budget. We also include position levels trends, and we include any program and service impacts of the proposed budget in these slides. Today, we are going to focus on police, fire, rescue, parks, recreation, culture affairs, public works. And this is just a reminder of the expenditure estimate for those departments back when we had the fiscal retreat on March 27th. Our first department of the day is the Fire Rescue Department. They work on fire suppression and medical and emergency medical services, fire prevention, safety inspections and investigations, fire and life safety, public education, as well as emergency management and coordination. They support all 5 goals of the strategic plan. On the budget trends table, you'll see their actuals for fiscal year 24. You'll see that their current fiscal year 25 adopted budget is $27.8 million. There have been no changes in the amended budget on the general fund side. And you'll see that their proposed budget for 2026 is $29.4 million, or $1.6 million higher than the FY25 adopted budget. And we'll go over what those changes are. And they are driven primarily by an increase in overtime year over year of $825,000. Standard merit increase and salary increases of $547,000. Increases in throughout, position control related to IAFF contract negotiations, and then some other minor changes in the personnel services line. On the operating side, there is an increase in fleet services. So this is fleet fixed replacements or fuel, things like that. And we are moving the fire assessment budget, the budget that determines the consulting contract and all of that is budgeted within this department. We're actually going to move it to non-departmental, just because it's better aligned in that department. And so you'll see that change here. Their position levels remain constant for 26 compared to the 25 budget. And you'll see those program and service impacts further outlined here. And with that, I will turn it over to the Fire Chief, Chief Hillhouse.
Welcome, Chief Hillhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sean Hillhouse, Interim Fire Chief. In addition to consistently delivering excellent emergency services, including fire, EMS, technical rescue, hazardous materials response, and aircraft rescue firefighting, in FY25, Gainesville Fire Rescue updated its strategic plan with a new 5-year outlook soon to be presented to the Commission. Transitioned to a 24/72 firefighter work schedule, which drew national attention and is currently being evaluated by FSU for health effects. This scheduling innovation alongside expanded recruitment and grant-funded training brought new certified firefighters on board, helped reduce overtime, and stabilize the department's workforce. GFR also saw key promotions, most notably Chief Adam Hinton advancing to Assistant Chief of Operations, who I believe y'all got the opportunity to meet during our quarterly update. Chief David Sutton took on the role of Fire Marshal, revitalizing the Risk Reduction Bureau by addressing audit findings and forging investigative partnerships. Emergency management efforts were marked by multiple City Emergency Operations Center activations, large event coordination, and development of numerous incident action plans. The department also prioritized strong community and health outreach initiatives. These included programs in homelessness, outreach, substance abuse prevention and treatment, public safety education, which reached thousands of residents. Signature programs such as Impact GNV, Bold, Violence Interrupters, and Community First further deepened neighborhood engagement and improved public access to city resources. Our goals for FY26, GFR will continue to emphasize resource stewardship, staff development, and innovative approaches to sustaining exceptional service and community safety. Special attention will be given to developing newly promoted employees and training our specialty teams to ensure continued readiness for local and regional responses and USAR, hazmat, technical rescue, and SWAT, even as federal funding diminishes for those programs. Top priorities also include collaborating with the City Manager's Office to build new fire stations and replace outdated facilities, advancing our Risk Reduction Bureau's work on audit findings, implementing frontline inspection processes, and in community health, GFR will build on its leadership in health advocacy, education, and violence prevention, remaining committed to serving and protecting the citizens of Gainesville. So we're looking forward to a great year coming up.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions for Chief Hillhouse? Commissioner Willets?
What was the difference between the salaries and wages adopted 25 versus amended? Because it was significantly lower. I'm just trying to remember that, because then when we look at 26.
I think you're looking at the difference between the salaries and wages and the fringe. So salaries and wages goes from 19.4 to 18.1. Is that the?
Yeah, because I'm just trying to remember that. Because I'm trying to compare FY26 to either the adopted or amended, and those are
So
pretty
those two,
different
if you add up salaries and wages and fringe benefits, those two add up to the same amount. So we just had to do some shifts between salaries and wages and fringe, but the overall numbers have stayed the same.
though. Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Ramos.
Thank you, Commissioner Willets. Commissioner Book?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, two quick questions. So I recognize that the salaries always are about 80% of any particular organization. It's appropriate, and I think that what we did with the labor organizations is totally appropriate. Is there any, have we kind of analyzed the budget, take a look at maybe infrastructure that could be moved, if we have it, within the GFR budget to be funded under street stations and strong foundations? We probably have already done that. I know we have those buildings, but I'm just trying to see how we can kind of whittle down and keep that budget where it needs to be.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I might, we have looked at all of that. We have even looked at how we can shift some of the one-time purchases into the fund balance recommendations that we will be bringing to the Finance Committee shortly. And we've done, I believe, some of that. And so you'll hear about that next Wednesday when we make those presentations. Maybe it's not next Wednesday, but probably later in June, when we come back to the commission. But we have looked at the different funds to see where we can shift funds appropriately.
Yeah, thank you. Then this is just more a statement on the grants and other funding revenue sources. I think we're doing a really excellent job with that, especially for some of our, like, paramedicine program and things. And so I'm appreciative that we're already using that to basically help with the efforts under this public safety.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Book.
Thank you.
I see no other lights, so thank you, Chief Hillas. Thank you. Ms. Ramos.
Our next department is the Gainesville Police Department. And you'll see for their core services, they focus on community policing and investigations, community support services, crime prevention, enforcement of state laws and city ordinances, and emergency response and order maintenance. They support three of the, overall they support all of our goals, but there are three goals that they focus on: are a great place to live and experience, best-in-class neighbor services, and an equitable community. In terms of their budget trends, you'll see that same shift in salaries and wages and fringe benefits between the FY25 and adopted budget that we just spoke about with fire. And you'll see that they had some carry forward in FY25 for some POs from FY24. And their proposed budget for fiscal year 26 is about $4.3 million higher than the FY25 adopted budget. And that is driven, on the general fund side, by the reinstatement of 20.0 police officers. And that is funding that we froze last year that we are now putting back in place. That's $1.7 million. Standard merit and other personnel increases is $728,000. Overtime expense of $720,000. And we also right-sized the school crossing guard budget of $240,000. That's all reflected in that personnel services increase. And then on the operating side, we did have an increase in fleet services, and that's fuel, fleet replacement, variable parts that are needed to maintain the vehicles of $338,000. We do have a TASER contract payment of $285,000. We have a body-worn camera contract increase, year-over-year increase of $225,000, and minor operating expenditure increases of $107,000. And so that's what drives the change in the general fund. You'll see that they do receive funding in the other funds, and that's for federal forfeiture, billable overtime, general capital projects, street station strong foundations funding, and some fleet management replacements. So just standard operating allocations there. Their position levels, we added one position in the FY25 amended budget. It was a grant-funded position, and we did some reshuffling in 26. So one of those positions is going away, but it's a net decrease overall in their budget. And we talked about the program and service impacts, but with that, I'll turn it over to police, our police chief, Moya.
Welcome, Chief Moya.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Commission, Madam Manager. So what I'd like to do is go over our fiscal year 25 accomplishments and roll into our fiscal year 26 goals. So for the year that we're currently in, one of our primary goals was to reduce traffic crashes by approximately 8%. That was quantified through the number of crashes that we were looking at year to year. We're currently sitting at 2,646 traffic crashes. If we stay on track, sad to say that, we expect a decrease of approximately 3%. So not quite 8% as I would have wanted to, but my goal was to challenge the organization, despite the fact that staffing doesn't allow us to do as much traffic enforcement as I would like to do. But nonetheless, they've met that challenge and are reducing that by approximately 3%. The standing up of our behavioral threat assessment management team was another one of our goals. That, as you remember, as I briefed the commission, is largely based on finding opportunities to intervene when we're dealing with a person that is suspected of heading towards a pathway to violence. We collaborated with not only Santa Fe College, the University of Florida, Alachua County Sheriff's Office, and other entities, and we are on track, right? Our goal was to involve ourselves in 10 diffusings. But I don't want 10. I'd like a less number because that tells me that we don't have that issue. But we have involved ourselves in 6 of them to date. 2 of those were considerable, where we are confident that it would have led to acts of mass shootings. So that continues to be in progress. The way I see that play out is I think our team needs to be deeply entrenched with the other entities that have teams already. So you may see more of a I don't know if I want to use this word, more of a task force approach than a siloed approach for this one initiative. An increase in our community engagement is always one of our goals. We wanted to experiment what it would look like to increase our engagement with our GPAL program. And as you well know, we were awarded our grant. We did some better oversight of how we, deal with that, the deliverables of that grant. And we increased our engagement of our police officers. So far, we're at 51 events, which is a good number. Last year was a little less, last fiscal year. So what I'm hoping for is that as we see the increased number of events, but I also see the increased number of officer hours, because I don't want the same people going to the same events. I'd rather have multiple officers or employees go to all these events. So what you'll see is us develop into tracking hours. So the reduction of shots fired, right? That metric, as you know, was key. We wanted to reduce it by 15% the fiscal year that we're in. So far, we're trending towards a 46% reduction. NIBRS, so the total crime index, our goal was to reduce it by 5%, and we're on track for 19%. Moving forward, our focus on recruiting and hiring, our attrition rate or our vacancy rate of our sworn staff was 17%. Currently, we're at 11%, which, by the way, happens to be the goal that we had set. So we're at that goal. I hope that it just continues to go down. Nationally, an attrition rate of 10% is expected. On the civilian side of the house, our goal was 13%. We currently sit at 15, so that one went up. But hiring is underway, so I anticipate that by the time the fiscal year ends that we will match that goal. In terms of our fiscal year 26 goals, we want to continue to challenge the organization and the community by helping us reduce traffic crashes by yet another 3%. Now that I know in comparables to our resources and the number of crashes, I can safely now challenge that the number is 3%. Our continued efforts with behavioral threat assessment management, the same goal of 10 cases, although I do hope it's less than that. Continued efforts, community engagement hours. So we're in the process, as we're preparing for the budget, like I said, to quantify what community engagement is by the number of hours, not number of events. We attend copious events, as you know, but I want to increase officer hours, which tells me again that the presence is widespread. NIBRS, now that I have a metric, I want to challenge the organization, the community, to reduce our total index numbers by another 5%, and another 5% in shots fired as well. Continued efforts with houseless engagement. As you know, given the changing of the law with House Bill and how that translated here locally, those engagements continue. And it's a tough metric because we started our efforts after the House Bill passed, and those engagements are in the 1,000 number of engagements. So I don't know how I'm gonna hone in on that as it relates to the House Bill initiative. But we're well over 1,000 engagements. And of course, now create a metric as a goal for fiscal year 26 to grow officer wellness. We've talked about that before. The access to mental health services is here, but I want to continue to change the culture to have our folks readily accept those services. That's also a tough one to quantify, but I'll feel it based on our total organization culture, plus my constant interaction with our primary EAP provider, who is fantastic. That is a snapshot of our accomplishments and objectives.
So thank you, Chief Moya. That is, I think, the first time that I've heard at this point in the budget process we certainly get quarterly reports from you all and have been for a good long while, and keep an eye on the direction of most of the numbers. But it's the first time we've talked about goals and how we're matching up to those goals. So thank you for that. That's especially helpful. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions? Commissioner Engel?
So again, this is kind of my first budget 4A, so if I ask some dumb questions, please excuse me. I just wanted to kind of wrap my head around the 20 officer positions. I think when we were looking at the difference between last year's budget and this coming budget, that's probably the single biggest item I saw in there. Currently, you said we still have some amount of vacancies, is that correct?
We still have, I don't know exactly the number of the vacancies, 31, which we expect to have that filled by early part of next year.
So, and I remember us talking about over the past couple of reports, so as far as our staffing levels now, how does that compare to our staffing levels in the past? Not just positions available, but how many actual officers we've got? Because I remember us talking about, like, this is one of the first times we really started to fill some of those positions, so we've actually starting to have the police force we got budgeted for. Is that
Yes, sir. I
also
believe we do
correct?
have that number. What's important to remember is that our hard push in recruiting and applicants hit us at the beginning part of this year. So a lot of those folks, to the tune of 30 plus, are still currently in process. In fact, in the academy currently and about to enter June's academy, and then October's academy next fiscal year. So we won't see the benefits of that till well after the new year. But the numbers that we've brought to the table has increased, so.
In comparison, at one point, we had somewhere upwards of 51, 57 vacancies, and this is as far back as 2023 to 24. This year, we have changed our recruiting process and all of that. We have currently, of the 31, we just about hired 3. We have another 17 that we are going to hire before June 30th because there is an academy, and all 17 of them are in a background process. But we plan on putting 20 applicants into the June academy. So that will take a substantial number of those 31 vacancies down. And also, Commissioner, as we move forward in October, the plan is to have the additional 11 vacancies filled by that time. So it is from the time we hire a police officer candidate until the time that they are fully trained is 11 months.
Gotcha.
So if I hire them June 30th, you will see them May of next year as a solo police officer on the street. So for us, unlike other professions, it takes a little longer to get them through our training process, teach them about community engagement and the style and culture of policing that we've come to expect here at the city of Gainesville.
Excellent. And what you're saying, it's been a long time since we've had that completely full, but we plan on having sometime the next year or so.
Oh, absolutely. And
Awesome.
as I mentioned in the quarterly, I think by January, you will see a very substantial difference in the number of vacancies that we have. Our anticipation is 0, but we'll see.
Very good. And then one of the questions, we've been talking quite a bit about red light cameras and the process that's starting with that. And we were talking about trying to hire some folks they're going to actually have to review those. The referrals we get from the red light camera company are going to have to be reviewed by somebody with GPD before a ticket gets sent out. Is that included as these full-time positions? Is this something outside the GPD budget that will be funded just by those red light cameras? Like, how does that?
I think based on the
Yes.
timing of our budget cycle, I may have to look at that mid-year next fiscal year.
Okay.
Or this next fiscal year, only because I don't know the impact, Commissioner, and I'm going to have to use whatever resources I have in-house currently to work it and then make some decisions based on that. I want to come to the city manager with data if, in fact, I'm in need of that FTE.
All right, very good. Thanks. I think that's all I got for right now.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Commissioner Engel? Commissioner Willets?
Chief Moya, do the 31 vacancies currently, does that include the kind of 20 unfunded positions?
No.
Because, so is it that,
Wait. The 31 that we have currently, sir, again, the question, does that include our,
because we basically have 20 FTE that are still there that we didn't fund this year. And that's part of the big going forward is putting the funding. That's one of the big differences.
Gotcha.
To the tune of 1.7. So the 31 is like, is it 11 vacant and funded, plus the 20 that are kind of technically unfunded right now? Is that right? Or is it?
I'm sorry if I might answer that. I believe it includes the positions that are unfunded. There are no additional 31. This is a part of that. Is that correct? For example, let me just make sure that I'm understanding. In the current fiscal year, we left the positions in the budget, but we did not fund them. And so next year, we have funded those positions.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that, I'm just trying to get the sense of that 31. It's not like suddenly you have 51 vacancies, on October 1st.
No.
Theoretically, and if you went crazy hiring, but it takes a long time, we would have found the money for the rest of those positions, is what I assume. I just wanted to make sure I put that into perspective. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. All right, thank you, Commissioner Willets. Commissioner Eagle.
You cannot turn off my please ask a question button.
I got you. Okay. All right, I'll see you for the lights. Thank you, Chief Moyen. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Our next department presentation is the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs. Their core services are cultural facilities and event programming, parks operations and maintenance, recreational and sports programming, the management of the Evergreen Municipal Cemetery, and the golf course operations. In terms of strategic connections, they support a great place to live and experience, best-in-class neighbor services, and an equitable community goal. In terms of their budget trends, you'll see that their FY25 amended budget is equal to their FY25 adopted, so we didn't have any changes there. And their budget is increasing by 4.1% in the general fund, $485,000, driven primarily by salary increases and some minor operating expenditure increases in their budget, which includes contractual increases mostly for pool and grounds maintenance. So these are year-over-year contract prices that go up. We have added funding for parks and trails maintenance and management of $85,000, and also increased the holiday celebrations budget, which includes the fireworks show, the tree lighting events, and all of that. And this is primarily due to also us expecting higher prices later this calendar year for some of those items. And we also include funding for the Hogtown Medieval Fair in this budget. Their position levels remain the same as last fiscal year. And I will turn it over to Roxy Gonzalez, the director, for additional comments.
Very good. Welcome, Ms. Gonzalez.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Roxy Gonzalez, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs. Over the past year, PRCA has continued its mission to enrich our community through recreational programs, cultural events, and environmental initiatives. Our programs have directly impacted residents citywide, fostering community engagement and well-being. We launched the second issue of our seasonal guide, Improving Communication with Our Residents. Cultural Affairs hosted major events like the Downtown Festival and Arts Show with 35,000 attendees, and the Hogtown Medieval Fair, which drew 50,000 visitors. Funding for the fair is included in our requested budget to maintain its success. Youth programs remain strong with full enrollment in our spring break camp and continued partnership to support youth residency and well-being. Environmental initiatives include ongoing efforts at Morningside Nature Center, where we removed 58 tons of trash and managed 39 acres of prescribed burns. Our recreation programs serve thousands, including 155 youth basketball players and 20,000 pool visitors. Ironwood Golf Course also celebrated a successful grand opening under a new concessions contract. Looking ahead for fiscal year 26, we're seeking increased funding for contractual services in pools and ground maintenance, park management, and holiday celebration. These funds will directly support service quality and ensure safe, well-maintained community spaces. Thank you for your continued support and investment in PRCA. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Commissioner Willets.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The increase in capital outlay from other funds, the 175. What is that for?
I will have to get back to you on that one, Commissioner
just
Willetts.
trying to understand that portion. I know it comes from other funds, not general. I just didn't know if that was golf carts or I can't remember.
I believe it's fleet replacements, but I want to confirm.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mayor.
Thank you. No other questions about parks? Anybody? Well, that was a terrific job.
And our next and final department for today is the Public Works Department. Their core services are regulatory compliance and maintenance of transportation, stormwater, solid waste, and facility infrastructure systems. We have solid waste and recycling collection, emergency response, and traffic safety and operations. They support a great place to live and experience, best-in-class neighbor services, and a more sustainable community. In terms of budget trends, this is a department that has funding both in the general fund and major funding in the tree mitigation, roadway resurfacing, stormwater management fund, and the solid waste fund. Those you'll see in the other funds category summarized. On the general fund side, you'll see that we do have some contractual increases for vehicle tracking software on the general fund side. And we're also eliminating the IQ Fiber third-party inspections program, and that's a reduction on the expense side and also a reduction on the revenue side. We are adding, the position levels are increasing by 3, and that's because we're adding 3 positions in the urban forestry program. And those are the grounds and events worker and a senior horticulturalist. And with that said, I will let Gail Mowry come up and talk for the Public Works Department.
Very good. Welcome, Ms. Barry, and welcome to your first edition of this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. So in addition to all of the preventative maintenance and reactive maintenance that we do for 800 lane miles and 200 miles of pipe, storm pipe, over 3,000 or 13,000 structures for stormwater, it's pretty intense. And greater than 100 buildings that we maintain. We also have quite a project delivery schedule. Currently, we have around a little over 50 projects that are somewhere in the preliminary design engineering all the way through construction phase. And I'll just mention a few of those that we have going on for fiscal 25. The lot 13 and 4 dumpster enclosures, lot 4 dumpster enclosures already been completed. We've done several ADA curb ramp areas between Cedar Grove, the downtown area, Northwest 7th Ave, and on Northeast 8th. We also have a lot of sidewalk projects going right now. We're getting ready to commence on a few more, Southwest 5th Avenue and Southwest 10th Avenue sidewalks. We have a crosswalk that's going in on Southwest 8th Ave. Some of you have probably already seen the lane repurposing for bike lanes under construction on Northwest 8th and 6th. We have some drainage projects going as well. The Northwest 1st and 1st drainage project to address some things downtown there. Tumbling Creek, which is a fully funded CDBG grant for $500,000. That's being currently rebid, but it is expected to commence this summer. We're also working on the design for the GPD property and evidence building reconstruction. One of the interesting ones has been the Streetery project. We've been working a lot with the community downtown to get their feedback and input, which will be presented back to you in July. Southwest 6th Street, we have a resurfacing and lane repurposing for bike lanes also, starting around Depot Ave, going all the way down to 16th Ave. We have a drainage remediation project over in Cedar Grove to address some significant flooding that they're seeing from some of the very intense storm events that we've been getting. Tree planting and property purchases throughout all the districts has been going on, and obviously many of you are aware of those. We have also a Northwest 8th Avenue resurfacing project. It's under construction now for all of the curb ramps and the concrete works being done. They'll actually start paving next week. It'll all be done at night. We have Glen Springs, another stormwater project that's going in. It's also a 75% grant funded project, and that's to help provide grade control for the creeks. It's eroding significantly in that area, so that's another granted project. We have the Southwest Public Safety Center for the Joint Police Public Works Facility. under design right now, and it'll move into fiscal '26 with construction plan for fiscal '26 and '27. Southwest 47th Avenue, we have a new roadway alignment that's going in. It starts a little bit east of 34th Street, and it wraps around and down to 29th Drive off of Williston, so it'll connect down to Williston. There's also, Wild Spaces has that somewhat aligned trail that goes along the north side and then extends continuing on to the east. We just completed a couple sidewalk projects on Northeast 15th Street and Northwest 2nd Street. Those have gone along really well. Fire Station 3 is currently going to be under construction. It's in design right now, and it'll be constructed in '26 and '27. And then one of our other interesting projects has been Northeast 9th Street. There's been a lot of public input on that project, and we are in the design phase. That design will be completed by September of this year. Some additional initiatives, some of them that have already been presented to you all, the Hogtown Creek Watershed Master Plan, which we completed this year. The city's updated vulnerability assessment was adopted. We'll have the adaptation plan, those projects also moving through here soon in terms of finalizing what those are. We are updating our engineering, design, and construction manual. So we've had 2 public meetings. We'll be hitting the plan review board in June, and you'll all be seeing that in August. Some other projects that we've had going on is our inventory data collection. We've been looking at pavement scanning and looking at all of our stormwater infrastructure, the pipe material and its condition. And so we're going to be using that data that we just collected in a new software. It's called DOT software, so it gets a little confusing for some of us. Sometimes we're talking about DOT, is it FDOT? But so the DOT software is going to allow the stormwater team and the operations team to look at pavement management and plan out how best to look at degradation of those materials, whether it's a pipe material or whether it's the asphalt, and try to look at a 5-year planning stage of what roads do we need to hit. One of the interesting things about this program is it does allow us to introduce the equity component into the ranking, and then we can also compile both of those pieces into one overlay to sort of try to piggyback funding and maximize our efforts between the operations team and the stormwater team. So, and we'll be implementing that over the summer, and we'll do that each year. We'll get updated information. We've also developed a replacement plan for traffic. Those pieces unfortunately do not last forever, and they are not inexpensive. But we have been doing the traffic team's been doing a really good job of fitting some of that stuff into the existing budget and getting that moving along. We've completed there's an anaerobic digester study going on. We're also looking at APWA reaccreditation. We'll be finishing that in mid-June. There's a zero waste education and outreach approach going, and then we also are realigning our KPI and performance measures. For 26, we have a lot going on. For 26, underneath the street stations and strong foundations, we have, again, the 9th Street project, which will commence in 26 and 27, and then the construction of the GPD property and evidence room, and then Fire Station 3. We also have the additional project deliveries I don't think I've mentioned yet, like Waldo and 3rd Vision Zero project. That's a bike and pedestrian signalized crossing, and that'll happen in fiscal 26. Northeast 8th Avenue, that'll be around Citizens Field, and that's also going to commence in the design phase. We'll also be looking at starting the design of West University Avenue under Safe Streets for All. The Cedar Grove Stormwater Project, we're planning to apply for granting. I think we think we should have a pretty good opportunity to get Resilient Florida granting or water quality granting, and that'll be under construction in 26. There's also the new contract for curbside food waste coming, and I do have Jared is here if you have any questions on a couple of these. There's also an invitation to negotiate for solid waste franchise agreement that has to be moved as well. And then one of the key things for us for this next fiscal year is navigating the removal or movement of the SMU and solid waste collection from the GRU billing into a different collection, and that'll be a big lift. And That's a summary of our activities for this year and the upcoming year. If you have any questions, happy to answer anything.
It's quite a summary. Commissioner Willetts, you good?
So why do we see the fringe under general fund not increase nearly, most of the other big departments, 7% or so for fringe increase, but under, at least on the general revenue, it doesn't increase very much for public works?
No, we try to keep our budget really super tight.
These numbers are based on what employees select for health insurance premiums. There could have been some changes in between the two, or maybe not changes, and so it's pretty flat. So that's what
Okay,
drives
it
those
just
numbers.
sticks out a little bit, is
Yeah.
a little different, okay. And then, kind of the weeds, but for the new software that has an equity layer or decision-making process, is, without overstepping the different charter officers, is the equal opportunity director involved at all, or kind of aware, or how does he perhaps fit into?
Yeah, we've been working with Ben Howard as part of the process and how to incorporate that into our overall, into the design of the software and how to score things and what criteria to use. So yes, we have been involved with EO the whole time.
Okay, and then this is looking into FY25 adopted versus amended. A big chunk of the difference of operating, I assume that was storm removal, that's where that lands in operating, right?
The big difference between the FY25 adopted and amended overall is carry forward of projects, purchase orders,
Got it,
carry
okay.
forward mostly.
Yeah, particularly in those other funds, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mowry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Book.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Director. This is not specific to Public Works. We've talked quite a bit about, at least across these departments, we have a large fleet citywide. We're a large organization. I doubt that this would be for this particular fiscal year, but it's probably something that's worth looking at, which is simply since we had the audit that talked about fleet over last year and kind of gave us some guidance, that might be something that as we look over the next 8 to 12 months, budget specific, we can look at some of these vendor options for leasing and maintenance, which have become quite proactive with most organizations our size over the last few years, and may offer an opportunity for efficiencies, perhaps past this fiscal year. But it's worth mentioning now, since fleet has come up 2 or 3 times. I know we do have some leasing options amongst our fleet, but not in any wide scale. So that's more a comment, Madam Manager, as it relates to kind of forward thinking over the next 2 to 3 fiscal years. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. Commissioner Duncan-Walker?
Mr. Mayor, if there were no more questions, I was just going to reserve mine because I did want to take us back. A question popped up in my mind about Evergreen, so I will wait. If there are more commissioners who want to speak to this, I do have a question of Parks, Rec, and Cultural Affairs about Evergreen.
Okay, Commissioner Willetts.
This was just, can you describe what the grounds and events workers for tree mitigation, just because I remember some talk about what we're going to do a little more in the next year, but grounds and events worker isn't nearly as descriptive as I was imagining.
Brian Singleton, Special Advisor for Infrastructure. We currently only have 1 FTE planting trees and trying to water them and establish them, so those grounds and events workers will help plant trees and then come back and water them. Also assist with identifying locations around town and on private properties, et cetera, to work with different property owners to get more trees planted.
Okay, the job description doesn't kind of match what we imagine them doing, so that helps clarify that. Thank you, Mr. Singleton. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, any other questions about Public Works? I don't see anything, so come on up, let's talk about Evergreen. Commissioner Duncan-Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, staff. One of my favorite parks, and I hope this doesn't sound too morbid, is Evergreen. And it's a cemetery, but it's a beautiful green space. And staff does, in my opinion, an incredible job of staffing and maintaining that. And I think you've also heard me say from this dais that one of the most daunting tasks that I have witnessed Parks and Rec do is to digitize us. That was an incredible feat, and I'm so grateful for that because it makes it not just more efficient for us on this side, but it also helps clients who call us searching for their loved ones in the cemetery. I did want to ask this, and you may not have this information right now, and I don't see Karen Pruss with us today, so perhaps you can get it to us a little bit later on, but I'm curious. First, Leslie, I know we sell foundations, correct? Foundations.
Yes.
Okay. Do we also sell monuments, meaning the headstones? We do not sell those. Okay. I knew I didn't see them on the site, but I just wanted a little clarity. I'm curious just about numbers in terms of interments versus disinterments and what those impacts have been. So I wonder if you have that anywhere where you can get that to us with ease.
Karen can, absolutely. We can get you the number of interments, by year or overall?
By year.
Okay, yeah.
By year.
Yeah, we absolutely can do that. Disinterments are less frequent, very less frequent.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
The whole time when I was working directly with them, we maybe did 3.
Okay.
So,
which is a
yeah.
good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. But I do know that the interments are things that we actually bring in revenue regarding, so I'd be curious about what those numbers are.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Duncan Walker. And it's a good opportunity to remind everybody that I hope to see everybody Monday morning at Evergreen, 10 o'clock, I believe. I think it's 10 o'clock for the Memorial Day celebration. That is actually, the event is run by County Veteran Services, but I hope everyone will come out and be a part of it anyway. And I'm sure that's where Ms. Press is right now, working to get everything ready for Monday. So.
This next slide summarizes all of the departments that we presented to you through today's date. We're at 7.3 million or 6.0% higher than last year's adopted budget at this point. In terms of next steps, we will come back to you on June 12th. We still have 6 departments to present, of which 5 do have general fund budget allocations. And at that point, we will be giving you a whole overview of the entire general fund. We hopefully will have preliminary taxable value numbers at that point too. We have been checking the state revenue sharing numbers and they're still not updated. So hopefully we will have a better projection of the revenues as well at that time for the commission. And that is all I have.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Manager.
yes, Mr. Mayor, so as you can see, in the presentation, there's a slide that speaks to the general fund fiscal 2026 estimates to date, and it rolls in the departments that we have already heard previous meeting, and those departments that you heard today. The column that is next to the right of the one in red actually shows you the difference, the 7.3, which is a creep beyond the initial number of 5.3. You want to go through that, Ms. Ramos?
So our initial, I'll just go back. It's just gonna take a while. So it's gonna be hard to tell you all where we are landing. I just changed course. I'm gonna go back to that slide. I think what Ms. Curry is trying to get to is that we had 4 departments today that make up the majority of the general fund budget, 2 of which have between them a $1.6 and a $4.3 million increase. So obviously that's going to drive our gap higher than what we presented to you all on March 27th. And so we, right now, preliminary estimates, we showed you a $5.3 million gap on March 27th. We're between 8.5 and 9 at this point with these changes that we showed you today. And we'll have those numbers more ironed out, obviously on June 12th. Once we have those taxable values come in, so we'll know where we're landing at that point, and obviously come to you with a preliminary plan on how to balance the budget at that time.
Very good.
That's all I've got. Oh, sorry.
So some of that filling the gap still, that is some of those things we've had in conversation that are brewing about some things that might be one-time opportunities that are really more either kind of capital that we previously had paid for out of general, but might be more appropriate out of fund balance. I just want to make sure that that is part of that.
The balancing. So if I might speak, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
So Commissioner Willetts is absolutely correct. So we do have a fund balance, an excess fund balance. I don't want to just say fund balance. We do have excess fund balance to the tune of approximately $18 million. And in some previous conversations with you, we talked about coming back, speaking to each of you individually, and then coming back with how we might spend that. But as we have had the budget meetings and we've seen the creep, we've slowed down coming to you with recommendations on how to use the excess. We spoke with Public Works in particular, and they talked about the urgency behind some of the maintenance that we have not been able to address. So we will bring those items to the Finance Committee next week, asking for permission to move that to the full board to spend some of the excess fund balance. But then, of course, there's a remainder. That remainder, we will be looking to use to balance some of what we have here, along with additional revenues that will hopefully be generated from another glance at our property tax growth. Right now it's 6, et cetera. State revenue sharing, all those things hopefully will help us to balance out. And those are the decisions that we will hopefully work through, not so much decisions, but challenges that we will work through, bringing them to you for those final decisions on how we close that gap.
Great, thank you. I'd just like to hear it one more time when we also hear the gap number, just for reassurance. Thank you all, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Eastman, I see you leaning toward it. Are you?
I'm good.
You're good, okay.
If I
All right.
have something to say.
No, it's all right. Okay. There's a lot of the lean forward today. Okay, so I don't see any other lights on this topic. Going one last time. We're not making any decisions on this, but do we have anyone signed up for public comment on this item? Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's move on to the next item.
Okay. Mr. Mayor,
Thank
we
you
are-
all for your time and attention today. I appreciate the presentations.
Mr. Mayor, we are moving on to our second business discussion item, which is 2025353, Fire Special Assessment Preliminary Rate Resolution, with a recommendation that the City Commission, 1, establish the preliminary fire services special assessment rate as follows. Residential property use categories rate per square foot, single-family residential 0.0900, multifamily residential 0.0892, non-residential property use categories rate per square foot, commercial 0.1185, industrial warehouse 00884, industrial 02267, and 2, set the public hearing on the annual rate resolution at 5:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as may be heard on September 11th, 2025, and 3, adopt the proposed preliminary rate resolution.
Very good. Madam Manager, do you want to kick
Yes,
us off there?
yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, members of the Commission General Policy Committee. This is the first reading on our fire assessment, special assessment for fire. In the recommendation that we discussed, or in the presentation that we discussed with you in March, we talked about an increase of up to 53%, excuse me, of recouping those fire services cost. And so with that, we, of course, have engaged probably over the last 3 or 4 years, GSG, to kind of help us through the mechanics and the analysis around how to do that. But we would generate, if we did increase up to 53%, an additional $300,000, approximately it's $317,000, to help us with additional revenues in the general fund to offset fire services. And so with that, we do have Ms. Sandy with us today and can address any further questions. We're not changing the methodology, it's just recouping a little bit more from the assessment.
All right, very good. Chief Hillhouse,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sean Hillhouse, Interim Fire Chief. So just to reiterate a little bit what the city manager said and add some history to this. So the commission initially tried to adopt the fire assessment in 2008. We successfully did that in 2010. We updated the methodology in 2023, and this is a long walk every year that has a lot of stops that we go through in order to set up the fire assessment. The fire assessment can only be used for non-EMS related portions of the fire budget. And what staff is asking today is to adopt the preliminary resolution, which just sets the maximum amount that the commission can move with, and you can always change your mind and lower it at one of our future stops along the way. And I think we are prepared to answer most questions that the commission may have.
Very good. All right, Commissioner Willetts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not a question. I move that we postpone this decision and instruct staff to return to the FY23 methodology for assessment. As mentioned by Chief Hillhouse, we had a previous methodology that we changed in 23 for FY24. All right, well then, if not,
No, wait a minute, was that a motion?
it's a motion.
Can you say it again, please?
Postpone the preliminary rate resolution and instruct staff to bring back a change of methodology to the FY23 and before methodology for assessment.
All right, Commissioner Book.
So I probably feel somewhat similar to you, Commissioner Willetts. I like the fact that we have a formula. Formula objectifies the way that we deal with budgeting, which is really important. We had it for our utilities at the time. I am interested in seeing, for example, if we have it, we could do it today, but it's not necessary. If we have 100 units, that unit paid what in 2025 and what in fiscal year 2026? Because I would like to keep our increases in essentially fees, whether it's fire assessment and others, flat for the other organizations. We're gonna result in hopefully what is a few million in taxable increased value, which will drive some of the things that the city manager has already referred to. But for the fire assessment, I like the fact that we have a formula, but I would certainly like to keep that as cost neutral to those that have to pay it, if at all possible. And I think that 317,000 is not a significant piece. So that makes me lean towards something like that. But I know that we have some decision making we have to make. So I'd be interested in comments, Madam Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I might, the fire service cost increases, as you saw earlier in the presentation. I believe it's a $1.6 million increase. And it will continue to do that. We're just not really able, the 53 is still minimum based on what we could cover. And, we started at 51, 53 is a minimal increase. And costs are not going down, they're going up. And I would recommend to the commission that we continue on the course that we are, specifically for the timing sake of it. If we shift and pause, we're going to run into issues in terms of the notice that we need to provide. And so I would ask the board respectfully to allow us to continue on the course that's being recommended.
Thank you, Madam Manager. So is there a second on the motion? Did you want to?
Well, so the question is, can we put a figure, just like we've done kind of for housing and taxes and things? A lot of times seeing what that actual dollar figure is helps me, at least in decision making, where we say a home now pays this amount, it will pay this amount. Do we have that, Chief, or we may not have that level of granularity at this point?
So I can give you some basic numbers. So the methodology that we use is based off of square foot under roof. And in the resolution, we heard the clerk kind of go through and talk about the rate per square foot. If I were to break that down for you under residential, single family, if you had somebody with a 1,700 square foot under roof house, they would pay roughly $150. Previously, the increase that we're talking about is 2.5%. So that would move them from last year at their $150 to $153.75.
So I want to make sure everybody's on the same page here. What Commissioner Willetts, what you're saying is to revisit, the motion is to revisit the methodology entirely.
That creates perhaps the rate per square foot.
Right. So it's and the staff proposal is to use the existing methodology, but increase the percentage. So that's the difference between those two things. Is that accurate? I don't want to misrepresent.
Oh yeah, that is what I'm suggesting, but I understand that the motion does not have a second.
I got you. Okay, all right.
And I understood that too. So
Okay,
it's the same as
yeah,
yours,
okay.
Mayor. And so, okay, that's a single family home, and where we saw our greatest increase was our multifamily. Do we have any, can we put any actual figures to say a 10 unit, a 100 unit, a 200 unit apartment complex, fiscal year 2025, fiscal year 2026, because that's really where there's impact within the fire assessment.
Well, you may have those numbers. I don't. I would have been happy to have provided those numbers to you today as we have, moved to this point. And so I'm not specifically able to give you that information.
I do not, Mr. Mayor, I do not have that, granularity level. We could do the math to tell you based off of square footage under roof, but I don't have a breakdown for an example of a 100.
That would just be something helpful. You could, perhaps, Madam Manager, just send that information that shows, that compares under current methodology what those figures are for various different types of living and space.
We can bring that back for second reading if that's appropriate.
Yes, ma'am.
So, but what thank you, Commissioner Brooke. And what we're doing here is setting the maximum for that, and we can change that in future meetings here, so.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
the consultant is here who works with us, and she may be able to add. I saw her approaching, and so since she is here,
Very good.
Sandy Newbarth with GSG. I don't have any examples of the XYZ apartment complex, but a 15,000 square foot apartment complex right now would pay $1,305, and it would go up to $1,338. The single family house with 2,500 square feet would go up $5.50 from $219.50 to $225. So it's the increase for residential is 0.22 cents per square foot. The increase for commercial is 0.29 cents a square foot, industrial warehouse 0.29 cents a square foot, and institutional is 0.56 cents a square foot. So it's very, very nominal.
Thank you, Commissioner Brooke, and thank you, Commissioner Eastman.
Yeah, thank you. As we said before, Commissioner Willetts, I agreed with you at the time as it relates to how the structure was. I think the way we had it designed before is how we did this was by square footage of roof, right? Was how it was done previously. Is that okay? Oh yeah, there were tiers associated with it as well. We were unique in our structure of how we did it from before, and so this was more. This protects us a little more legally, but it had the offsetting effect of charging multifamily more than it did previously, which multifamily is already charged more under the tax code because of safer homes exemptions, all sorts of funny things within our tax code that disproportionately fall onto apartments. I don't know if it makes sense at this point for us to go back to the old methodology after having shifted to a more industry standard methodology, but I agree with you in principle, Commissioner Willetts, that anything that we can do to get our tax code to be a little bit more fair for the folks that are paying more, which tend to be renters and people in multifamily, is good. I just don't know if this is the time to if going back to our methodology because of all the other things that could be caused by going back to that and just the impacts of that. I did have a question. We asked previously about exempted properties under the fire assessment. That was a discussion at City Commission meeting previously. Have we taken a look at what in our code, what entities are exempt from paying fire assessment and what the financial impact of that is?
So you have all government is exempt. The other is a charitable and nonprofit. I mean, charitable and religious exemption, but it's kind of a grant kind of a thing that you choose to fund it every year. So they get noticed on the trim notice that of their charge. But then if they qualify under and you decide to fund your charitable and religious exemption, then they come out. So it would be, they have to qualify as charitable or religious. And then so it's not all institutional tax exempt. If they don't fall under that charitable or religious, then they are charged.
And what is the fiscal impact of that grant program?
It is $539,220. So about $540,000.
Okay.
This year. Your government is your biggest, $1.9 million.
Yeah.
So it's your biggest.
Okay.
And then you have a hardship exemption for those who at a hardship for income.
Right.
And that's about $9,000 a year.
Okay, so not significant, the 9,000, but the 500,000, because they said revenue to be collected in FY26 is 12,614, which is 2.6% higher. You'd be able to remove that, as Commissioner Book said, at least that portion, which is the revenue increase. I guess that's talking about from what we had, the percentage that we had previously up to the new one. It'd be the revenue difference.
If you remove the charitable and religious
Right.
exemption, you would have about 540,000 more. You would have a lot of people coming down to give their input.
For sure.
And it would be after the fact because they're so used to having it on their trim notice and then it coming off before the tax bills are sent.
Right.
So if you wanted to do that, you may want to send them an extraordinary notice. That would be up to you completely, but to let them know because they don't usually get an extra, notice. It just automatically comes off.
Right. All right. Thank you. That was all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So we don't have the opportunity, just to clarify, to charge governments. We're excluded from that.
You can charge them and send them a separate bill and
Just
ask them
pay
to
it.
pretty please pay.
Right.
So, but you can't put them on the tax bill and you can't lien their property. You can sue them
Right.
and pay attorneys a lot of money to defend you.
Unsuccessfully.
Correct.
probably. Yes. Yes.
Well, or they may get a judgment. You might get successful. They get a judgment. There's no collection
I
enforcement.
got you. Okay. All right. Thank you. Commissioner Ingold.
I have a couple follow-up questions myself. One that's it's a 2.5% or so increase. Is that equal across all the different categories? Okay. And then just out of curiosity, I noticed that one of the lower ones is industrial and warehouse. And when I think of like the difficulty in fighting fires and where you're going to run into needing specialty equipment and where you're going to have the extra training and those type of things, I think of chemical plants we have in town, the airport, the other kind of industrial settings seem like they would be the most difficult to deal with fire. And is there a reason that they're so much cheaper than?
They're not demanding as much. When you fight one of those fires, you're there for a while, but they don't have as much activity, so you don't run as many calls to them.
Okay.
That's the reason.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could elaborate on that. So one of the things that we looked at was historical demand over multiple years, and that was what that was based off of. So there are some complexities to the locations that you mentioned, but quite a few of them have good practices and relationships with the fire department. Some of our chemical manufacturing companies actually have fire brigades, so it did not increase their use under historical demand.
Gotcha. And then I wasn't here for the last debate about fire methodology. Would be happy to take a look at it. I think this would be a hard time, timing-wise, if we've got to hit some pretty hard dates on being able to put this stuff out. But if there's, I'd certainly be willing to look in between budget years if there's a way we need to adjust it. But I'd be kind of hard-pressed to make that decision today. And then I also wanted to kind of echo Mr. Eastman. I think there's some value in taking a look at what exemptions we're giving. We've got some hardship exemptions for people that need help. If there's some little wooden churches that need some help, like I'm all about helping some of those. But if there's institutions that are doing very well and need fire services, I don't think it's inappropriate to ask them to kick in a little bit towards those fire services, especially as we're looking at a budget that is going to have a fairly large hole in it due to issues we've got with GRU and keep going forward. So I think if we could look at some type of merit-based exemption or need-based exemption instead of just a blanket exemption across.
Now, you have to treat everybody equally in order to be legally defensible. You have to treat them equally.
Sure, but
you can't pick and choose. We like this church better than that church. You can't do
Right,
that.
but you could do something similar to you do with people that are in a hardship that says if you are facing economic difficulties, or is that
I think a while back when you first implemented your program, now I wasn't involved intimately in this program back then. I think you used to have the churches apply for the exemption, and it became an administrative nightmare. And so you put that grant in there. With specifics, there's a resolution that states out the specifics to qualify for it. Now, you don't have to exempt it at 100% either. You can say 50% or, 80%, or something like that. It doesn't have to be, the exemption doesn't have to be at 100%.
Okay, thank you. And that would just fall under institutional as far as our,
Most of those are in the institutional rate category, yes.
gotcha. And then as far as the religious institutions that are affected by this would obviously only be the ones that own land.
That
Right?
were what?
That owned land. If you were renting a building, if
Yeah.
you were a little storefront church or something like that, obviously you're still having to pay the same fire assessment.
Yes,
as anyone
if they own it, and not if they're renting it. If they're renting it, the person who owns the property, who gets the tax bill would
Sure.
be paying it.
Yeah, I'd like some information back on if we decided to do either a portion or some other look at that to see if we could do something a little more fair. Just, I think that's, and again, so I understand just the dynamics of how that actually works. We set out a fire assessment. Everyone has to pay that fire assessment,
Correct.
except for government institutions who we can ask very nicely to.
Right.
The exemptions that we set out, that money then has to be made, we have to take money out of general fund and put it back into that fire assessment, because we can't just give them an exemption, we just have to cover it from a different source.
Correct, and it's because of, you can't shift the burden from those who aren't
Right.
paying, who you've made the policy decision not to pay.
Sure.
To the ones who are paying, because then they would be paying more than their fair share. And so that's why you have to do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems like
You don't fund it 100% right now, so essentially the general fund absorbs it. Whatever you don't fund, you're only funding at 51.68% right now. So whatever you don't fund from this, the general fund absorbs it. So you may not see that money shift, but it actually is, it means the general fund's contributions are a little bit more.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Engel. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, Commissioner Engel, I would enjoy seeing you take on the churches. And I'm going to let you take that one alone, because I've done that before. I've been there. I've been there. And I would say that most churches today are struggling. They don't have money because they don't really have the parishioners. So I say, take them on.
That sounds like the voice of experience.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Commissioner Book.
Yeah, in concept, what you said, Commissioner Engel, it sounds really good, because it does allow us to take a look and say specifically, but there's just, there's kind of some protocols, and I think if we went down that road, the organizations that were likely to get impacted will just mean less service that organization itself is able to provide to the people. So inevitably, it ends up back in our lap potentially. I was just trying to think that the different fees, and we've addressed a bunch of things comprehensively the last couple of years, to kind of right-size some of the things while dealing with some real fiscal restraint. And so we dealt with some license and occupational fees as a whole. We just did that within the last few months, and we slightly increased them, and it was the right thing to do. I think it was, because they'd not been increased. We're already talking about towing and the mechanisms to right-size that and deal with some things that haven't been amended in, I don't remember what the years, but it was many, many years we had to do that. And then we're dealing with a deficit of up to $5 million in trash and collection fees, because it wasn't kind of done incrementally, and we've just made the changes to increase those slightly, and we're still running a deficit in that particular area. And that's really, and then the millage is coming, whatever we decide to do with the millage. But that's kind of my way of thinking, that this is probably the one that I say we leave it at the recoupment rate of, well, you said 51.5 plus, 51.68%.
That's what it's at.
Is what it is. The figure here is not much. We leave that, and there may be the opportunity in the next 12 months when we have a little more time to talk about that. But the formula is a formula, and I do like that, because I did indicate it objectifies kind of what we do and takes the arbitrariness out of it. But we leave it. I think we've done a thing across several different aspects. And I realize this is setting a max, but often what we set here is what comes before us. And I think we probably stop here and then figure out what that millage is and what we're talking about from a general revenue perspective and what our revenue sharing is going to be, and have a little more clarity here in the next 30 to 60 days. But we do not increase the assessable potential for the fire. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. Let's see, Commissioner Willetts.
Commissioner Brooks, so just to be clear though, that's, or rather, Madam Manager, we just saw Chief Hillhouse, we just saw GFR's budget. It assumes that increase of 317,000. So if we do not do the up to the 53% rate, it takes our, let me see, I got my number from the last one. It takes our 9 million budget gap to 9.3.
So the revenues that we've projected to date includes the 317,000, and so yes, it does help us to address the deficit or the gap that we are encountering to date, yes.
Right, and Commissioner Book, you were honest about, if we don't do it here, it's more likely on the general millage to make, or potentially could be made up on general millage. So I think I hear what you're saying. So I think in the end, it's better off the 53% under fire assessment. I don't want to be so far ahead of other communities with the percentage. Is it Sandy? I'm sorry. Can you, out of just experience, other communities, what kind of a percentage do they do of recouping all their fire services?
The Broward cities are close to 95 to 100%. Up around here, 50, 60%. Usually they don't go to 100%.
Okay. And
But
so that's,
this is not out of the ordinary. It's fairly equal or lower than other areas.
right. That's what I kind of wanted to hear. 'Cause
Correct.
that lets us understand we're not completely out of the norm. To some degree, I kind of like, sometimes with taxes, I like things to be real clear, like, you pay for this, this goes there, and it's kind of a transparency to the voters to understand, even though they hear fire assessment and they think fire and rescue, so maybe it's not transparent because it's hard to understand. But the 53% seems okay, and I'm fine with that. So I make a motion that we move forward, setting this preliminary rate resolution at the 53% for FY '26.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And Commissioner Eastman, did you?
Yeah, I did just want to add a little bit of context into this, is that I don't like any more than anyone else setting, but you're looking at fire assessment, figuring out how we're going to do it this way. I will say that, and we've said this at previous commission meetings, and I think the conversations we'll have more of these conversations as we get into June or July, but we are looking at a $7.3 million gap, which sounds like it might be increasing. The amount of money that has been taken by the GRU authority started out at 6.8 million, 1.1 million in addition for street lights, 413,000 to pay for the lawsuit that they're putting against us, which puts us at about 8.3 million. And that doesn't include also the pausing of the total GSC, so it would have increased this year. So it might have been closer to $9 million. But that basically, this gap is a gap that was created by the financial changes of the GRU authority, and we're going to have to figure that out in some way. And I think this is just probably the first of of conversations that we're going to have about how we fill that gap. But this gap it was created, we're dealing with it, and I don't like it, any more than anyone else does. But I think that's where we are, and that's where we got to go. And so I'm happy. I think this seems reasonable, and so I'm willing to support it.
Mr. Mayor, if I might intervene at this point in time, information is important, and I think the context that we're building around this is important in terms of the increase based on, public safety. Yesterday, if I might ask Mr. Varvell to come forward, we had some information shared with us from our actuarials.
He thought he was going to slide on this one.
And I think it's important for the commission to hear the impact of the market, on, what is impacting our insurance costs.
So you want me to talk about the contribution rate?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I want to make sure that was the bad news I get to talk about. We received the VAL, and that's the actuarial VAL. They set the annual required contributions for our police and fire plan, and there's about a 380 basis point increase in that. That's about a 3.8% gap between what we were paying for retirement in those funds last year compared to what we'll have to pay in FY '26. And depending on the covered payroll, it'll be somewhere between $1.1 and $1.6 million in addition to what is in the budget right now for their retirement benefit.
That's a hard one to swallow.
Right, and that's based on the fluctuation in markets.
So,
These things are real and they come home to roost. Commissioner Engel.
I had a follow-up from Mr. Barbell.
Yes,
I pressed
Mr.
my
Mayor,
button before
members
you
of the
sat
commission.
down. I tried to catch it. So you said that was based on the police and fire pension.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We have a much larger pension for general governments.
We do,
Are
but-
the dynamics similar? Or do we expect something to?
We expect it to go up a little, but not to that extent. The big driver in the consolidated plan was related to salary and pay increase, pensionable wage changes over the last 5 years. We expected it on the police side. We did a almost $10,000 base rate increase effective October 1 of 24. So we knew we were going to see it. But I don't know that we thought it would be to that extent across the board. Technically, it's about the same size when you look at the general pension plan and the consolidated plan as it applies to general government, right? So we have members that work at GRU, we have members that work in general government. That number, the covered payroll number, is actually significantly higher related to the GRU component of it. One of the things we are looking at is are we paying a rate as general government that is reflective of the liabilities that are being generated by the covered payroll in general government. They tend to have longer tenure, lower turnover, so the mix of people in the plan could be materially different.
Sure. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barbell. Thank you, Commissioner Engel. Do we have any public comment on this?
We don't have any public comment.
Okay. And this is a roll call vote, so let's go ahead and call the roll.
Commissioner Engel?
Just to clarify, this was the motion to increase the fire assessment to a total of 53?
Yes.
Aye.
Commissioner Chestnut? Aye. Commissioner Desmond Walker?
Aye.
Commissioner Book? Aye. Commissioner Willets?
Aye.
Commissioner Eastman?
Aye.
And Mayor Ward.
Aye, that passes unanimously.
Okay.
Madam Clerk.
Okay, and the next we have member comment.
Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask the manager to give us an update at some point on the Thelma Bolton Center. We haven't heard anything on that one in some time, but not today, if you could bring it back.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Commissioner Willets.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if the manager could tell us if any forward motion on 8th and Waldo with the school board in particular, just because, I think we're moving, there's a lot to discuss, and we're going to be coming, in a week or two with some more information. But did the school board need any other information? Where are they with their their full offer? Have we gotten their full request of what they might want out of the stadium?
No.
Have they responded? I guess we got a response, but it wasn't the response, correct?
So we discussed it last Thursday amongst the board here, and the superintendent and I did have a follow-up discussion that Friday. She was very confident that they would be able to answer many of the questions that we had posed to them about a month ago, and they would have their letter of intent to us probably within the next week or so. So they are moving forward with a letter of intent. We are moving forward with the inspection of the stadium. We got a structural report that the school board, conducted in 23, I believe it is. And of course, our codes people, our building inspection staff are working with them to go through the stadium. We have maybe a specialist coming from the University of Florida that will be doing an evaluation of the field. We will be addressing the compliance and accountability issues that were raised in the presentation that Commissioner Chestnut gave. We would anticipate this information coming back to this board in July, at the meeting in July, which would be July 17th possibly? Is that the date? So that's when we would come back, hopefully with some assessment of the LOI that they've submitted, having an opportunity to work with the attorney, which we have not done yet, because we don't have a document to work with. And the information regarding the inspection should all be completed and would be a part of that presentation. Now, relative to 8th and Waldo, we have a presentation from NV5 before the commission on June the 12th. And so that will be there and will probably give more context to whatever the school board is requesting. But that's how it's lining up right now.
Okay. Just wanted to kind of come back to that one last time, not last time, again, before we go forward. And then otherwise, I just wanted to mention, if y'all have not seen, there's new trees planted on Depot Avenue. They're replacing some old palms. Just want to tie that together to that tree mitigation of having more people out there to be able to do those kind of things, to catch up on some of those opportunities to plant trees and on some of our land. But that's one of those direct places where we see it on this year's budget, but hopefully going into the future by giving them 2 additional staff to get that done. So I just wanted to mention that if you haven't seen them. Some of the palms die for disease problems, and now they'll be replaced with something slightly. I don't know what it is that replaced them. I haven't slowed down or walked by to see what it is, but Ms. Mallory's not here, but I just wanted to say that. That was definitely during Brian Singleton's time, so thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Willits. Speaking of palm trees, just to give you all a heads up, something I'll be bringing up or asking to be on the MTPO budget, because it's, or not budget, but rather our MTPO agenda, because it's not a City of Gainesville street that this is a part of, but the palm trees on Southwest 34th Street that honor the victims of the student murders. One of those trees died from lethal bronzing or whatever the virus is. My understanding is that FDOT diagnosed the tree that died as having lethal bronzing, but diagnosed the others as not having it. I'll promise you the others are going to die too, because it's an insidious disease. I mean, it's taken out all our wonderful sable palms across at least North Florida and probably all of Florida is my guess, which is a horrible shame. But my point is, I am going to bring this before MTPO to talk about a more permanent monument in that space, because it is wonderful to honor people and events with living things like trees, but living things like trees also cease to live at some point. So I want to have a conversation about a more permanent memorial and marker space there. It's not an enormous thing, but it is an important thing to a lot of folks in the community, and I want everyone to know that, yes, we're aware of this, and it's something we've given thought to. I appreciate FDOT moving forward and just replacing the tree immediately, but I don't have any confidence that tree will flourish. So anyway, while FDOT's in the room at the next MTPO, that's something that I'm going to bring before us.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Before you adjourn the meeting, there was a question asked by Commissioner Duncan Walker in the last meeting regarding our communications department marketing, regarding Thelma Bolton and some equipment that was there previously, and so we do have an update on that. Cynthia, either you or Jennifer can share that with the commission. Commissioner Book, you did ask some additional questions as well. We owe you some information. I just didn't want you to feel left out today. Okay.
Ms. Ramos?
Yes. So I believe the question was about the studio cost at WFT. So we do pay $1,300 a month. The contract is for $15,600 a year, and we put together an estimate of what it would cost to do an initial outfitting of an in-house studio, and that's $61,900. That doesn't include any additional maintenance costs that we would need to fold in for replacement of camera equipment or if something breaks. But that's the numbers that you were requesting, I believe.
There is some old equipment, though. You want to speak to that?
There is some old, yeah, Jen can come up.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Welcome, Ms. Martin.
Jennifer Smart, Communications Director. Could you please repeat the question?
Sorry, Jennifer, I know that there was some additional information regarding the equipment that may be outdated that was in Thelma Bolton that you're not able to use, and I just kind of wanted to make sure we covered everything.
Right, so we have some used lighting and storage at the RTS building. They are outdated technology. They produce a lot of heat, so if you're in the studio with them, it's not very comfortable. The gridding that was over them to hold them in place at Thelma Bolton was removed and it was not saved. We have shelved the old cameras. There are 2 of those. Those were replaced by newer models. They're used as backup. They could be re-implemented for a studio if we wanted to refurnish one, but the quality is not very good, so we had moved on from those in order to use a higher technology.
Thank you, Madam Manager. I did just want to, just for a point of clarity, thank you. For a point of clarity, the $61,000, was it $61,900? What was that for again?
So I can give you a cost breakdown, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
We would probably put this into GTEC, which was the space that was being discussed with our broadcast division. We estimate there would be $8,000 for soundproofing, $5,000 for electrical, about $4,000 for ceiling reinforcement to hold the lighting grids. The grids themselves are about $6,000. The fixtures for the grids are about $7,000, and that total estimate is $30,000. And then when you go into the camera equipment that would be using to outfit the whole space in order to put on a program, we would have professional grade cameras. 3 of those at $5,000 per unit is the lowest price point, although there are varying price points for camera equipment. The tripods and mounts would be $1,500 total. The lenses and accessories would be $3,000 per camera, so that's a $9,000 total to outfit for a 3-camera operation. As you know, you've all been there at WUFT, we like to have 3 cameras because then we have different shots that we can switch between as we're producing the program. We would also need, in order to do that, the video switcher and recorder, that is $1,900. Teleprompter unit, because we do use the teleprompter for these programs, that's $3,500. The software to control the teleprompter is $1,000, and so that total estimate just for the equipment would be $31,000. So that's where we get the total estimate of $61,000.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you again, Madam Manager, for bringing this back. I am very interested in exploring this a little bit further, and once you get this to all of us, I'd probably like to agenda a conversation about what that might look like. I am first obviously curious if this would be a savings over time, and what our capacity to do this might actually be. You know, I think that the show that you all are producing is wonderful. Thank you for your work on that, and I would love to see it continue. I just wonder if it might be a savings on our side, and then I wonder if there may be a little bit of room for us even to expand, either doing our own additional programming internally or offering opportunities for the community to maybe come in. Perhaps there's a nominal fee that they pay us to do a show. So there are a lot of different ways that different communities do it, but I would love for us to, get this information from you and possibly have a conversation about it down the line, about what it might take to do our own, produce our own shows internally. Because I don't think this 61.9 is very bad at all. 61.9, I don't think so. But I'd love to explore it a little bit further once you get us the information.
Thank you for your
Thank
support.
you. Thank you very much. Are there conversations, and I don't want to be presumptuous, are there conversations already at communications about possibly doing something internally?
We had conversations to research the answer to your question.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, we'll take it further. We'll take it from there. Thank you very much, Ms. Martin. Thank you, Madam Manager.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Duncan Walker, and I see no further lights. We will see you all hopefully Monday at Evergreen. We are adjourned.